What are you doing?
I'm going to tear all these papers down to size a little bit so I can make them into a book.
What is the book gonna be like?
Like one of my art books.
Just from like random pieces of paper?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Well, here we are sorting through all of that brown packing paper that as artists we can't seem to throw out. So I thought instead of just hoarding it all, because I have way too much to use for packaging up orders or moving or whatever, I'm going to make a book out of it. So come along as we use up all of our bits and recycling from our orders and make a book. I started by tearing my pages all down to size and folding them in half until I had a big old stack of papers. So for the next part of the book, now that I have assembled my signatures, I've decided that I am going to make a cover very similar to my fern book, if you've seen that. So I had made my signatures and I made a cover from scratch because I didn't have any used books at the time, and I love using old books. Like I just got this one from the thrift store, and I will use the inside pages. I also like how it's a bigger font, so I can like cut out little individual words for pieces. Oh, didn't see that there was pictures. That's fun. Anyway, sometimes I make my books out of old books, but for this one I just use bookboard, and this is bookboard. This is actually from the back of a paper palette, I think of watercolor paper or something. So for this one you can go and see the series of making this book, but I collaged the cover, added fabric to create my spine and added in there, and then I did a long stitching to put all of my papers in. You'll see I overstuffed this. It is only maybe halfway painted in. Nope, about a quarter way painted in, and it already sits chunky. So if I were to paint on all of these and the pages get wrinkly, and that's why they get thicker because they don't lay flat together, it's going to be a big book. So there's a chance I might have to take this apart, rebuild a thicker spine. We will see. I'm not sure. But I learned from that mistake when I made this one, which unfortunately I was just not in a mood to film when I made this one. And now that it's done, I kind of wish I had filmed it. But I did the same concept. I made my book covers from scratch. They're all attached together with fabric, and this is glued on. It's not really holding the cover together as much, but it kind of is. And I just love this. I did all the stitching and the doilies and stitching through that paper. I'm very happy with this, but I decided to make it a thicker spine so that it would have room, because right now it sits like that. Still might be pretty thick, but actually if you look at all these pages, they're already wrinkly, because I also made this in a pretty cool way. I just wish I had filmed it. So Brooke Henry has a video on her YouTube page where she makes these things called Frankenpapers. And a Frankenpaper is where she takes papers from her stash and she glues them all together to make them into bigger pieces. So kind of like, here's little bits glued together and it made it bigger. So I made this whole pile one day. I was feeling I needed some creative time, but my flow was just not there for what to make. So I just decided to make Frankenpapers. I made it for like 2 hours. I had this huge stack of papers. And then I thought, what am I going to do with these? They were all kind of, I don't know, not even quite 8 by 10. 9 by 6 maybe. And I just didn't know what to do with them. So I decided, oh, maybe I'll make them into a concertina book. And a concertina, if you don't know, is a book like this, like an accordion. So it can you can flip the pages in it, and then it just keeps going, kind of like this little infinity book, but it's an accordion. And so I franken-papered my franken-papers all together into this long, super long strip. It was probably like, I don't know, 7 feet long. Very long strip of paper. And as I started kind of folding it together, I thought, this is huge. I really don't like this as a concertina book because most of my franken papers were becoming one-sided. I had collage bits on the fronts, and then the back of my franken papers were turning out quite plain. Ignore the pink, but like quite simple. It probably didn't even have that piece. So I thought, I don't like this. So instead, I cut my strips back up, but I cut it twice as wide as my original franken papers, if that makes sense. So then I could make a signature. So you can see like that's one big sheet. And then I thought, I'm gonna do some pre-work on these pages before I sew them all together, because I wanted kind of this carry through. So you can see I started painting. I glued more bits on, first of all, and then I started painting on the sheets before they were sewn in, so that the painting continues all the way through. And I loved it, and I had so much fun doing that. I left some parts nice and blank, obviously. And I just did all of these little preambles, and I used a bunch of my, of course I put a piece in upside down. That's just the way I go, right? I used some of my homemade washi tape stickers that I have a video of. You can see how I make those in here as well. That's one too. That's one. And now I'm at the stage where I'm like, oh, I really like this. Do I want to do more with it, or do I leave it? Do I sell it? I don't know. If you've watched one of my other videos where I talk about what I want to do with my business, you'll see that that's at the forefront of my mind. What do I do next? Here's another piece where you can see kind of half the drawing, but as we go over, there's the other half. Anyway, I had so much fun, and I loved the way that's upside down too. Is this whole book upside down? Yep, that's why it's upside down. I'm looking at it upside down. Anyway, so making franken papers, so much fun. Honestly, I thought it would use up way more of my stash than it did. I feel like I could make franken papers for days and still hardly make a dent. So here's a little flip through, I guess, of the franken paper book so far. So long story short, I made this one with extra spine space. So that is my plan for this craft paper book. And you'll have seen I used packing paper. Some of the paper already has bits of paint on it because my kids love to use the packing paper as like a table protector, which is great because then they get these cool little bits of color on them, and I keep them and we'll use them. So I have those all set up for signatures, and that's a lot of pages. I'm looking at it, and I just kept going. So I'm trying to decide now. I think I have 2, 3, 4, 7 or so per signature, and I might cut them all in half and do 2 books. We will see. I need to figure out if I have more book board pieces. So first things first, we're going to cut down this book board. The pages are all different sizes, but the approximate 6.5 by 6.5. At least that's what we're going to go with and see how that works. Looking at that one's quite skinny, but they need to be 6.5 by 6.5. I also like working square, and I love working on craft paper. This book here is all brown craft paper. This was actually made out of paper grocery bags. again, it got really chunky. I took it all apart and re-sewed it with a looser spine so it could accommodate itself better. But I really like working on brown paper. Color just looks really cool on it. Anyway, all right, I've chatted way too long, so I'm gonna cut this down and then we're gonna work on turning this into, we're gonna cover this. And I can't totally decide how I'm gonna cover it. Part of me wanted to paint it and leave it kind of rough looking and then do some like light collage on top. Or I thought about collaging the whole thing. We will see. But for now, I'm gonna just cut it down. One tip I want to give here, when you're cutting through thick media like this book board, do multiple light strokes instead of trying to saw through it all in one go. It will give you a nice crisp edge. Using a fresh blade helps as well. And I suggest don't do as I do and use a plastic ruler. Use a metal edge ruler because this blade can cut into your plastic. So in trying to figure out what I'm going to use as my spine, because this will be my cover pieces, I didn't have any book board that was going to be wide enough. I had these offcuts, but that's only like just under 1.5 inches, and that is, I think, going to be too thin. Actually, let me think. Maybe it wouldn't be if I'm dividing this up, because I have 2. However, I don't have extra book board to make a second cover. So I either make a big old chunky with all my signatures. So now you get planning in real life. I actually don't like how tall this is, which is kind of a bummer because I could have had a wider spine if I had thought about this ahead of time. But now I'm wondering if I just reduce these all to just 5 instead of 7. It's not quite in half and it's not quite as tall. I think what I'm going to do is cut these back down a little bit more. Currently they're 6.5 by 6.5 or so, yeah. And I think I'm going to keep the 6.5 wide. Is it going to make that big of a difference? I think I'm going to keep the 6.5 wide and go down to 6 tall. So let's cut this down and then I'll come back to how I'm going to do the spine. Okay, I think I like that better. And I'm going to just take down a few of these. We'll save these for something else. And these 20 will make up my signatures. Okay, I feel better about that. I'm gonna clip these and set them aside, and we're gonna work on covers. So I got this paper from my thrift store. I love our town's thrift store. It is so good. It is still the cheapest thrift store I think I've ever been to. And this was essentially a brand new pad of paper for $1.25. So couldn't turn down that. Even though, funny enough, I don't really like marbled paper. I know it is very big in the bookbinding world of classical bookbinding. A lot of people use it on the inside cover of end sheets. Let me see if any of my old books have it. No. Anyway, so for example, it would be on this inside cover, marbled paper. Or if they were doing like a leather book, it might have a leather along the spine and then marbled paper on the cover. Kind of like this leather, and then they would have this marbled paper on the spine. So I don't like marbled paper, but I loved this color and the golden yellow. So I think I'm going to let this be the inspiration for the covers of this book. And technically these sheets are 6x6. Where is it? But this is like a fake perforation on there, and I thought, oh, I can leave it be 6.5 and I'll just figure out something, or make my stitches along there or something, and you won't really see those. But now I've cut my books down to 6 so you won't see them anyway. And then from in here, I had taken a very, in my opinion, ugly page. Where did I keep this? Sorry, I just reorganized my whole shelf here and I don't really know where I had pulled that out. So instead of putting cardboard, like a heavy card as my spine, I was going to just layer up paper. So I thought I'll glue this to this sheet and I'm gonna fold it in half. So it'll be 4 layers. It's not gonna be strong enough. I think I'm still gonna have to reinforce with some fabric on the inside. But anyway, I was gonna fold that in half, and then this can be my cover outside spine. So I'm going to glue this and then cut it down. I just need my glue board papers. So I'd rather not get glue all over my mat. Clearly, that has not always been the case, but I'm trying to reduce it because I like to be able to see my lines. I am just going to use a glue stick, I think, for this. Side note, when buying glue sticks on Amazon, know what size they are. I thought I was getting bigger ones than these in a multi-pack, and those hardly last. Just using a bone folder to really secure that and spread it flat. This is the size I thought I was ordering. If you're in the States, they have these like mega size glue sticks, and I'm quite, I'm a little jealous and would love to get my hands on them because they look super cool. They're like these honkin' huge glue sticks. Okay, so we're gonna fold that in half. I'm not caring too much that this isn't perfect because I am gonna trim it down. Now we're gonna glue this closed as well. I've also decided that my new way of making books is basically winging it. Going with the flow of inspiration, not properly like planning all out. I mean, who says that's proper? Some bookbinders probably would, but I'm using the concepts of bookbinding and the creativity of being an artist and junk journaling and not caring as much. Okay, one reason I don't like marble paper is I feel like it looks like weird diseases sometimes. And this one is giving me mold now. But this side I like a lot better. So I think that outer is gonna be my outer cover. And now that this is glued, I feel like this is, I considered, do I reinforce it with cardstock or with even cheap watercolor paper to thicken it up a bit? But I feel like that's gonna be just fine. And I'll trim it down. I should mark these so I know my directional, which is my up and downs versus side to side. Okay. I'm gonna carefully trim off this teeniest bit here. Here's my other issue that I have. Do I keep this? It's actually a pretty cute little tag, or like a ticket. I could punch a hole on this side, finish gluing that all together. That is going in the little keep pile. Okay, so this is 3 inches wide. So I'm going to give myself a 2-inch. Do I want a 2-inch spine? That just seems huge. I know that my big purple book is 2 inches though, so let's put this in here and give it a feel for how that would be a 2-inch spine. I know it doesn't seem like much, but I'm going to test at 1 3/4 spine and see how that feels. And then I feel like I like 1 1/2. Let's go with 1 1/2. So we're gonna find my center. I know is 1 1/2 because this is 3 wide. And then we're gonna go 3/4 that way. I'm using this to just score that so it can fold easily. And then we're gonna go 3/4. That way. So now this should fold quite nicely where I scored. And that's going to be the outside cover edge of my book. Now we have to make this look nice too. So come join me next Friday as we decorate the outside cover and finish assembling our book together. Thanks, bye!